name is Lauren, and welcome to Circles. We believe in relationships, and here at Church Unlimited, Circles, what we call our small groups, are how we build relationships. Circles are where we are there for each other, where we support, encourage, and celebrate each other during the week. It's also where we continue to grow spiritually. That is, reminding ourselves of what Jesus did for each of us. Our hope for you is to take advantage of opportunities like this one to experience the perfect love of Christ through your circle. So thank you for joining us. Let's get started.
Hello again, friends. My name is Pastor Brandon, and we're so thankful again that you're here with us, hopefully in a room full of people that you love being around. It's been a great season of Circles so far, and this is episode number 5, which we're calling Reconciled. We see in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 19, this word of reconciliation, interesting word. It says, God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself, not imputing their trespasses to them. That word imputing means charging. God wasn't charging the trespasses, the sins of the world to them. Instead, he was reconciling them. What does that word reconciling mean to us? That's what we're talking about for the next few minutes. It really kind of carries with it the same idea that you might have in balancing your own checkbook. Now, I may be dating myself, but when I was growing up, especially when I was in high school and college, we were taught how to balance a checkbook. The key to balancing a checkbook is ensuring that what is going out is the same amount as what's coming in. If there was ever a discrepancy, then you would have to bring one balance up to meet the other by reconciling, making the balances equal. That's what this Greek word reconcile means. It means to come to the same position. It means to bring into agreement. It also means an exchange. Think about it this way. When God was looking for a way to resolve the sin issue, there was a separation between God and man. And so Jesus came and ultimately brought the balance of your account up to his account. It says, it goes on to say, and he has committed to us this word or the message of reconciliation. Our role now as believers is to communicate to the world that there is no longer a separation between God's righteousness and your access to it. It's not because of any number of verbs, any number of sins that you've done that you're separated from God. Rather, you have been reconciled by faith. The balance of your righteousness has been brought up to match the balance of God's righteousness. Paul goes on to say, now then, we are ambassadors for Christ. As though God were pleading through us, we implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. In other words, accept the fact that your balance has been brought up to match God's own balance. A little further down in verse 21, it says, for he made him, God made Jesus, who knew no sin, to be what? To be sin for you. He became the sin in your life. Ultimately, the judgment of God fell on Jesus on the cross. You remember when Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all unto me? Well, there's a word italicized in your translation. It probably says, I'll draw men, not in the original version, the original manuscripts. The context is literally Jesus saying, if I'm lifted up on the cross, I'll draw all judgment unto myself. And this is exactly what happened. The judgment of God fell on sin once and for all time, resolving the sin issue, reconciling, making your account of righteousness equal to God's own righteousness. We see again in 1 John chapter 4, something we looked at in our last session. As Jesus is, so are we. What does that mean? It means that you and Jesus have the same balance. Whatever's required on the day of judgment, you have the exact same balance as Jesus does. Think about reconciliation in this. If the balance of God's righteousness is 100, the balance of yours before Christ is 0. There's no range of righteousness. There's not a 33 when you're having a bad day, a 98 when everything's going your way. Instead, when the reconciliation took place, God said, I'm going to take your balance of 0 and I'm going to move it up to match my balance of 100. That is true reconciliation. He reconciled your nothing to his everything, making your balance equal with his. This is why understanding that merger that we talked about last time is so crucial, because your spirit is no longer yours. It's been merged. There's been a takeover. God moved in. And remember, when God moved in, sin moved out. Because God will not share his home with sin. There's no sin in your camp because you are now the camp of God. Then we see in Colossians chapter 1:22 a culmination of this reconciliation. Watch carefully. Yet now he has reconciled you to himself. Where were you at 0? Where was he at 100? What happened when he reconciled you? He made your balance equal with his. He didn't say, I'm coming down to 0. He says, no, I'm going to make your balance of righteousness perfect, just like mine. He did this through the death of Christ in his physical body. And as a result, I love it when Paul talks about the results. Like we're results-driven people, aren't we? Like, what do I get for my $10? What do I get for my $15? We want to know, what are you going to give me in exchange for my money? Well, in this case, here's what we get as a result of Christ's righteousness. As a result, he's brought you into his own presence. What a place to be. Friend, you're never far from the presence of God. You and God are one. God's not over there. He's not inviting you to come find me. He says, I'm there in you. You and I are one forever. He's brought us into his presence, and then he describes us. This is you. I'll pause here for a moment because it's probable that you wouldn't believe this if you didn't see it right here in black and white. Watch how God describes you. It sounds an awful lot like Jesus. He says, as a result of this reconciliation, you are holy. Would you be willing to say that right now? Everybody in the room say, I'm holy. And blameless. Say, I'm blameless. As you stand before him without a single fault. That's you. I know you think those things are Jesus, and certainly they are, but don't forget there's been an exchange. That's what the reconciliation is. Your old righteousness, even in the old covenant, the most that you could try, the best you could do, it was counted as nothing, as dung, as filthy rags compared to the perfection of God. God's not picky, he's perfect. And in his perfection, he made you just like Jesus, holy, blameless, without fault. That's what your spirit looks like. Isn't that good news? In conclusion today, let me get you started on a couple of discussion questions. Number one, something for you to have some fun with today. What does it mean for God to reconcile us to himself? We just talked about it. Take a few minutes now, pause the video and discuss that. Number two, the second thing I'd like you to talk about is how many faults does your spirit have? If you can get these timeless, eternal truths in your heart, I promise you, you're going to enjoy life a whole lot more than this ritualistic, I've got to do everything just right or else. That's not who our God is. He gave freely. That's what love does. And I trust today has been a meaningful day for you. Thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you again in the next session.
Enjoy the rest of your time together. Eat some food, play a game, or just hang out. We encourage you to stay in touch with each other during the week. Go do something fun or simply check in. Just be intentional. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.